This week on the agenda, as the Prime Ministers of Spain and Norway visit China, what does it tell us about the relationship between China, the EU and the rest of Europe? Trade tensions between China and Europe have been in the spotlight this week as the Prime Ministers of both Spain and Norway headed to China. After meeting President Xi Jinping and Premier Qiang, Spain's Pedro Sanchez said he believed honest dialogue between China and the EU can solve trade problems, especially with regard to current concerns over electric vehicles. With me now to consider just where this leaves the relationship between Spain, China and the European Union are Ana Palacio, Spain's former Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Manuel Torres, partner in China of the international law and tax services company Garrigues. Thank you both for coming on the agenda. Ana, let me start with you. How important to Spain is the relationship with China?
Relationship with China is important the world over. For every country, big or small, it's fundamental, I would say. Now, Spain. Spain is the fourth economy of the European Union, of the Euro area, and plays a role there. We have to play. We are from the south, and in all the balances that are in the European Union, Spain plays an important role. Now, having said that, you have mentioned the EVs, the electric vehicles. There, Spain is the European Union. This trade policy is one of these areas where we are together, all the members of the European Union, and Spain has a role to play, but within the team.
Let's talk a little bit more about those trade ties, Manuel, because in the meeting between President Xi and Pedro Sanchez, there really was that focus on deepening commercial ties in sectors like artificial intelligence, the digital economy, new energy and other high-tech fields. I wonder how you see all that working out.
I think that China and Spain enjoys an excellent relation, and now we have to deepen this cooperation. In several sectors you mentioned, for instance, the green energy, the Chinese group Envision announcement on investment for more than 1,000 million USD in the sector of the green hydrogen in Spain. An MOU was signed with the Spanish government. In another sector, in order to promote the train between the EU, the city in the southeast of China to Madrid, and also some companies from China have decided to set up the headquarters in Spain in order to develop green energy. So I think that this kind of visit works quite a bit well.
What assurances do you think Pedro Sanchez was setting out to get on this trip, and did he get them? I mean, he said that the deals signed in Beijing showcase the huge potential and bright prospects for cooperation between the two countries.
Well, I think that the word is cooperation. But cooperation needs a level playing field. And this is what what is in the background of all these debates. China is first. China had the vision precisely in what Manuel Torres was saying in the area of energy transition. China has an advance, is a pioneer, is the leading country there. And in Spain, we have bet for this energy transition. So there is a natural dialogue there. But again, what we Europeans in general, we want is to have a level playing field with China. China has to understand that now it's a big power. It's in the first or second economy, and it has to just to review certain approaches that when China was a developing country did not disturb the international trade.
Yeah. China is a really important trading partner for Spain, especially around things like dairy, like pork, like electric vehicles, all things which have been heightening those tensions between China and the European Union. What, if anything, do you think has this visit done to ease some of those tensions?
Let me tell you that, for instance, in the pork sector, last year, more than 560,000 tons were exported to China from Spain, and the value was around 1,223 million euros. It represents more or less 20% of the Spain export, and always the same figure with regard to the import in China. So I think this kind of visit helped to ease those tensions. And also, I remember the Prime Minister said that this kind of dispute have to be solved within the World Trade Organization. And I think this is the same position that China has. It means that Spain supports the principle of the free trade and open market. And also China has the same position. I think that in order to concentrate, the idea is that it's more World Trade Organization in terms to solve the conflict and less unilateral increase of the tariff.
I mean, Anna, would you agree with that assessment? I mean, Joseph Borrell has said that China and EU differences shouldn't push everybody into systemic confrontation. Has this visit helped with that?
Frankly, this is the position of the European Union and has always been the position of the European Union. The European Union understands that decoupling today doesn't make sense at all. And we need to avoid confrontation of any kind, and we need to reach common grounds in which, but again, these common grounds have to be discussed and have to be applied. And this is what is at stake today for China with the European Union, but all over the world. It's true that in certain quarters, but not really in the European Union, there is a certain idea that demonizes China, that just understands that China wants to overwhelm. No, I mean, the European Union doesn't think about that, and Spain even less, and this is the trip by Sanchez. But we stick to this because for us, it's our competitiveness. And you may have heard about the recent report by the former Italian Prime Minister and central bank boss, Mario Draghi, that just highlights the importance of this competitiveness. We need to work on that, and we need to work on that understanding that there is an interdependence. There are too many ties that bring us together that we have to come to terms with the terms in which we conduct these exchanges.
And Mario Draghi said that Europe needs to invest a lot of money to be able to compete effectively with China. And one of the hot potatoes that you've already mentioned, of course, is electric vehicles, Spain being Europe's second largest exporter of EVs. So, Manuel, that row between China and the EU over electric cars was bound to come up. And President Xi talked about Sanchez playing a constructive role in improving the strained relations between China and the EU. Do you think we're going to get any more detail on how that might play out?
But that this is true, but not only President Mr. Xi said, also Vice Premier Li Guangzhou said that Spain plays an important role in regional international affairs, and I think that Spain is also a trustworthy partner of China within the European Union. Every time that the Chinese authorities meet with the European, sometimes they have the idea to discuss not only bilateral, as Anna said, with the European Union, with the Commission, but also independent for each country. Germany is a good example, France is another example. So I think that our Prime Minister came here, tried to get the same position, the same advantage of this position. But also the Premier Li Qiang said that they expect that Spain will play a constructive role in promoting China-European cooperation. So it's not only our government, it's also the Chinese government is looking for what Spain is going to do. And said that this Prime Minister said that protection and unilateralism are rising the world economy and is facing more risk and challenge for China. And I remember that they highlighted about the vehicle, the overcapacity of the electric vehicles in China is baseless. So this is the position that the Chinese government has. No? On the other hand, our prime minister said that Spain wants to continue playing a positive role in promoting the health development and European-China relations. So I think that it was a very intelligent movement, a very smart movement to come to China to discuss face-to-face with the government, because I think that to increase the trade war is not the solution.
And Manuel, that positivity shown with Spain welcoming plans by China's EV maker Chery, those plans to open a plant in Barcelona.
But not only in Barcelona, but also all the plans they are planning to build in batteries. So it's quite a bit important for the e-vehicle. So they are planning to invest in the south of Spain. I remember that the president of the autonomous government from Andalusia announced a huge investment from the Chinese company in the batteries in Linares for more than 2,500 million euros. So yes, it's clear that China has interest to invest in Spain.
And Spain has interest in China investing in Spain. Now, what is the background of all this discussion? And I think that as you are based in London, there has been an interesting article on this topic by the Financial Times. The background is this taxes on EVs. And of course, Europe just has this competitiveness challenge. We are betting on that. And we have a policy, again, yes, Spain is Spain, but in trade, Spain is the European Union. And changing or having a U-turn on these taxes, I think that this is something that, of course, I mean, in politics, everything is possible, everything is legitimate, and I hope that there will be a mutual understanding. Just this idea that we need to find, and I'm paraphrasing sentences that are absolutely in China's handbooks, just a win-win situation.
I think on this visit there was an emphasis too on people-to-people exchanges. China's extended that free entry of up to 15 days to 11 European countries, including Spain. And I wonder, Ana, how you think that's helping with bilateral relations and with EU relations in general.
I mean, you know, first-hand knowledge, speaking to people, knowing a society remains invaluable even in these days of video conferencing. And we are using it, and it's very important and it's a useful tool, but nothing replaces the personal contact. And in the West in general, in Spain, we really know very little about China. China or Chinese society at certain areas in Shanghai or in Beijing know much better Europe or Spain than we do. And we really need to foster this personal exchanges, because this is the thing where you can build relations that are the ones that we need and the ones that we have to promote.
Ana Palacio, Manuel Torres, thank you both very much. Still to come here on the agenda, a greener plan. We'll examine Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre's visit to China. Welcome back to the agenda. Like his Spanish counterpart, Norway's Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre has also met President Xi Jinping and Premier Qiang this week. The focus for him was very much the green transition and how China and Norway might work together to make the world more sustainable. Joining me now are Shaohua, Associate Professor for European Studies at Fudan University in Shanghai, and Jørgen Randers, Emeritus Professor of Climate Strategy at the BI Norwegian Business School. Thank you both for coming on the agenda. Professor, let me start with you, because Norway was one of the first countries to recognise China, and the two countries are now marking 70 years of diplomatic ties. The green transition, seafood exports, shipbuilding and maritime industries are all quite important areas of collaboration between China and Norway. I wonder where you see there's scope for growth.
I think there's always scope for growth if there's enough political will. And I think Prime Minister Støre's visit has demonstrated that there is a political will to further expand and deepen bilateral cooperation. You have mentioned some of the important areas of collaboration, and I agree that green transition will continue to be one of the top priorities on the bilateral agenda. And in this area, there is huge potential to cooperate on developing green technology, promoting maritime sustainable development, and also green finance. Considering Norway has the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, right? Yeah. And I think another area that you didn't mention, it's education, culture, and science. Prime Minister Støre gave a talk at Fudan University, and he spent quite some time exchanging with students from both China and Norway. And I think this is a sign that both sides attach great importance to education change and cultural collaboration. And during this visit, China announced a visa-free policy for Norway, and I think this policy will help facilitate bilateral cooperation in this field.
Professor Randers, of course, as we've heard, one of the biggest announcements from this trip is that agreement for China and Norway to meet every 2 years to discuss the green transition. And that's going to cover everything from plastic pollution to green value change, enhancing renewable energy to preserving biodiversity. How important do you think this announcement is?
I think it is very important for two reasons. First of all, it demonstrates the ability of Norway and China to continue the civilized type of conversation that has been going on for decades already. And the second reason is that it is important to clarify what Norway and China can do together in order to accelerate the sustainability transition, because simply by clarifying what can be done, this will tend to increase the speed at which things are done.
So you're talking about a lot of the opportunities there from the green transition, but with that come challenges. And of course, that big trade tension between China and Europe at the moment is around electric vehicles, a key part of the green transition. So, Professor Randers, how do you see that playing out from here?
China has done a tremendous service to the world in developing cheap electric vehicles during the last 15 years. In that way, China has significantly accelerated the move towards a fossil-free world. It is, of course, a problem for the rest of the world that their auto workers lose their jobs when the Chinese electric vehicles are cheaper. And the current response in the form of tariffs on Chinese cars, I think, were to be expected. I think it will continue until we have a balance in the source of cars in the Western world, where we're not 100% dependent on Chinese cars, but it will not last so long that there are zero cars going from China to Europe. It is a pity in one way that such trade wars are necessary. On the other hand, it is important that the welfare of the Chinese people, the workers of China, and the welfare of the workers of Europe and the United States are balanced in some way on issues like this. So I think what is happening is acceptable.
Professor Jan, Spain's Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, was also in China this week. Now, Spain, of course, is a member of the European Union. Norway, while being a European country, is not an EU member. How do you think perhaps Norway might help China's relationship with the European Union?
Yes, as you said, Norway is not a member of the EU, but it is a member of the so-called EEA, European Economic Area, and also is a member of NATO. So I think that gives Norway a unique position in shaping China-EU relations. And I think there are several ways in which Norway could play a role. First, I think Norway is a good example of growing cooperation with China, especially on electric vehicles. So I think Norway could offer some lesson for China and the EU to find a balanced approach to the EV dispute and to avoid a trade war between the two sides. And secondly, I think if the condition allows, Norway and China could also restart the negotiation of free trade agreement. And I think this will build momentum for China and the EU to reassess the value of the so-called CAI, comprehensive agreement on investment. Last but not least, I think Norway is a neutral country, right? So Norway has good experience in peace building and conflict resolution. For example, Norway broke the Oslo Accord between Israel and Palestine in 1993. And I think Norway can do this together by bringing China and the EU and other parties together to mediate the conflict in the Middle East and maybe in Ukraine as well. And I think this will help improve China-EU relations.
Norway needs big investment in infrastructure projects, and China has Arctic ambitions. And of course, you've got Chinese shipping giant COSCO, who has quite deep pockets. There is a balance to be struck, though, isn't there, Professor Jan, between business, job creation, and national security? I wonder what your take is on that.
I agree. We need to strike a balance between security and development. While states have legitimate concerns for national security, I think they should not hyper-securitize on everything, right? You mentioned the case of COSCO, and we have the case of Huawei. My take is that rather than blocking Huawei or COSCO, I think there could be a balanced approach that allows for attracting Chinese investments while addressing legitimate security concerns. And I think this approach has already been adopted by Germany in July on the case of Huawei. And I think that also offers some lessons for other European countries when it comes to the balance between security and development.
And more broadly, Professor Randers, how far do you think visits like this go towards diffusing tensions between China and the rest of the world?
I think such visits are crucial in demonstrating that it is fully possible and very attractive to continue talking in a civilized manner. And that they also help highlight exactly where the fully legitimate differences in opinion exist. And, it makes it possible to demonstrate that our leaders are grown-up people, that it is fully possible to disagree fiercely on certain issues, and then at the same time try to identify the huge areas of common interests that exist, and particularly in this case between China and Norway for the reason that these are both nations that prefer a stronger state, a more active state than many other liberal countries of the world, and have proven the success of that model. Norway having evolved into an extremely rich and very evenly divided or high equality type nation in the last 50 years. And China has also used its strong state to make sure that 1.5 billion people, 1.4 billion people have been moved out of poverty during the last half century. So yes, I think very important because it shows the importance of civilized conversation, and it highlights the fact that one can disagree on certain matters without stop talking.
Professor Jan, you mentioned before that Norwegians can now travel to China visa-free for 15 days. I wonder what impact you see that having on business and on business travel and also on leisure, on tourism.
Well, this is actually a continuation of the efforts by China to further open up itself to the world. And, you know, since last year, China has extended visa-free policy for several European countries. And I think this has already produced good results. Yeah. So I can physically see more people are traveling to China for business purpose, for tourism purpose. I see more students, including Norwegian students, coming here to Fudan University. So I think I expect the visa-free policy for Norway will produce similar results.
And Professor Randers, I wonder how you see relations between Norway and China developing, especially in terms of the green transition going forward.
I am hopeful, and I've been so for a long, long time. You know, nearly 30 years ago, I was the president of the Norwegian Business School, and we did establish this program in Fudan, an MBA program in Fudan that still is operating, you know, having produced hundreds of people who have a joint affection for China and Norway. And I think that the visa-free availability of that great country to Norwegians is going to be a huge boon, you know, both on the tourism side and normal travel and normalizing relationships. But I'm particularly hopeful in one other area, and that is that in the area of developing China into a welfare economy, which is clearly, as I see it, the ambition of the current leadership of China. And here there is a lot China can learn from Norway. China GDP per person is now about the same as Norway in 1960, you know, around 15,000 PPP dollars per person per year, 2017. And this means that China is now at the economic development stage where Norway was when we started introducing the welfare society, where the state takes responsibility for big, weaker groups. And so I think when China makes this big next step, you know, relationships with Norway, learning from the history, learning from the mistakes we did, and learning from the success we have achieved will be very important, and I think a central topic in the conversations between the two nations over the next decade.
Jørgen Randers, Jan Shaohua, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Good.
You can watch every episode of The Agenda in full on CGTN Europe's YouTube channel. And for exclusive extra content from me, my guests and the rest of the team, don't forget to check out The Agenda Show on TikTok.
Coming soon on The Agenda. The Nuclear Future. We'll have a special programme from the World Nuclear Symposium 2024. But for now, from me, Juliet Mann, and from all of the Agenda team here in London, goodbye.